All right, Tyler, thank you so much for being on the show, host of the Counter Complex YouTube channel. Before we get into the channels and the specifics of the topics that you kind of touched there, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to where you are now as host of this new YouTube channel.
Uh, well, first, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure, and I'm sure there's going to be a really fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and I think for me, I was raised in a Western culture, just like everyone else here. Most maybe some of your audience, but the, it seems like the name of the game for this culture is to be anything but what you are in order to be safe. And so as being raised in that in a family that was very obsessed with imagery, like appearing as though we're successful. Uh, I grew up in this culture, and my parents did the best they could. They were raised by theirs, so it's no slight on them. Um, they were raised by a culture that was very much needed to appear, like I said, successful. So what we did is a culture we would ignore elephants in the room, right? Like let's not ignore this big looming dark feeling or sensation or incongruency or inauthenticity, and let's just move toward the appearance. And that was just the name of the game for me. On top of that, I had a biological father that wasn't in the picture, and there was fatherlessness for generations before me. My even my adopted father, I was adopted by a good man, right? But we're very different biologically. He had fatherlessness, was adopted by by someone else as well. My mother had like three generations of fatherlessness, and then even my biological father, who wasn't around, had fatherlessness for like several generations. So that was a big theme for me, something that has really catalyzed me into the work I do now. But so I had just a lot of difficulty, and I had this intuition or this instinct to really challenge or call out the elephant in the room. So I was very much a black sheep in the family, and I created so much seeming disharmony in my efforts to get back to what I would call authenticity. And it was very subtle. It was like a part of my spirit. It was a part of this inner desire to like feel connected, feel a part of, right? And so inevitably, in that disharmony in my teens, I found drugs. They were the solution for me for a long time. I made it impossible for me to continue to live in my family's house. So I got kicked out very young. Was on the streets for a while. I was homeless for a long time. I was doing hard stuff too. It was very difficult for me. And so that led me to it was interesting because there was a few experiences that reached out to me that kind of found me during those times. There was one such experience in the midst of like a really dark time for me. It was one of the hardest times in my life. It was like I was on the brink of homelessness. I had made it impossible for my family to continue helping me, and they'd spent a lot of money trying to help me, right? And I hit this point where I was it was like hell on earth for me. I was just in this state of mind that was so just unbearably difficult. Just this, just what I would describe it as this feeling of just complete not good enoughness. Like I had failed, I had sinned against reality. It was just so like just palpable in my being. And at that time, there was this, I don't know how it describe it was very numinous, this experience. But several books found me and in my surrender because I was so desperate. I started reading. There was several books. There's this book called Wherever You Go, There You Are by John John Kabat-Zinn. I think it's a mindfulness meditation book. And another book called A Course in Miracles. And I would read them and I didn't understand anything that it was saying, but something inside of me just kept like, it was like letting me know, hey, this is the answer. There's something in here that's special. And I remember in the mindfulness book, it talked about this idea of presence, right? This idea of being still and present. And for a moment in my hell, I just really tried looking at the wall for a moment and just focused on seeing the wall in stillness. And for a moment, just for this brief moment, everything was okay. like there was nothing wrong. And I realized that there's this huge contrast between the activity in my mind and this other reality that is without thought. And so that began this like journey for me during that time where I uh I started meditating a lot, right? I started meditating. And this is gonna be a long story. I hope that's okay. But I started meditating and eventually like I managed to pull away from the drugs on my own. It was this peculiar time because yeah, anyways, I'll so meditating and I went like 9 months and I did this raw food diet. I did all these things and I just stayed disciplined because I was so desperate, right? I was like, okay, I'm not going back to that place. And there was this one such meditation where I was getting really good at it, and I was in this state of mind where I was able to put myself in a trance, in a deep trance, and in this trance state, I experienced like almost like a dissolving of the body, almost like I lost kind of the boundary between me and everything else, and I kind of fell into this state of like what people would call the infinite particle. And it was hyper, I was hyper aware. And I remember in the experience there was thoughtlessness, but if I were to put a thought to it, it would have been like, oh, this is everything. This is what everyone's seeking, right? This state of peace. And and then this is the really weird part. I suddenly had this experience, and it was like if I were to put imagery to it, it was like I was falling out of a theater. And and the screen of my life was like on the theater screen, and I fell out of it, and then I suddenly had this hyper real, hyper physical experience of waking up. And the way I describe it is in the same way you wake up from a dream here on earth, the contrast between the reality of that place in the dream and this place, the difference in reality, right? It's like, oh my God, oh yeah, of course that was just a dream. When just a moment ago I was in the dream and it felt like all there was to reality, right? It was like, oh yeah, this is all there is. Suddenly I'm waking up and, for real, and I'm in the world and I'm like, oh, that was just a dream because of how much more real this place is. That same thing happened to me, but it was on a higher plane. And I don't know how else to describe it, but it was like suddenly I was becoming hyper aware, hyper awake, more awake than I've ever been to this reality that was in the moment the answer to everything. It was like everything I yearned for, everything my body, my soul, everything's the need to belong, the sense of oneness, this I feel like this condition of being alive here on planet Earth, right? It's like everything was satiated. And I was suddenly liberated from all the hardware of the body. It was like I didn't need to have to process things in my brain anymore, the limits of the hardware of the brain. And there was this sense of expansive knowing that just transcended reality. I mean, there's no words to describe it. Even now, as I try to remember it, it's like I'm having to remember it through the hardware of the brain, and I can't really even do it. It just is, I'm so limited. And in that place, I remember just it was like this huge breath of this sigh of relief, like, oh, oh, this is all there's ever been. And and it was like waking up from a dream. And my life on earth was the dream. And and it confirmed it made that brief moment, because I was there for a moment. And I could describe like physically, I remember looking down. I remember like people, they'll often say like, oh, an out of body experience, or there's this idea, this preconceived idea that this experience of having an out of body experience or maybe having like an awakening or something is going into a spiritual realm, which implies it's almost really smoky and kind of like ethereal. In my experience, it was more physical, like hyper physical, hyper real, much more tangible, like like times 100. It was wild. And in that state, I remember looking down at what I would imagine were like a feet or something, but it was very different. I mean, it's really hard to describe. There was colors and like behind the feet, it was like a meadow. It's very much like exactly what you would describe as heaven, right? It was just very much that way. And and then for a moment I thought to myself, "Oh, what about the friends and family that I left behind?" Right? And as soon as I thought that, I snapped right back into my body. I just went like just this condensed, like this condensing feeling of shrinking down and just warp and just went right back into my body. And I jolted awake and I was shocked and I had no idea how to, I wrote it down in a journal. I had no idea how to talk about it. And I kept that hidden for 10 years. And I didn't talk about it. I had no idea how to talk about it. And I was so, anytime I would try to share it, this really vulnerable part of me would open up, almost like the energy of my being, the thing that we cover ourselves with here in this world, was exposed. And like it would be so nerve-wracking for me that I felt so vulnerable, like I would be rejected, I'd be judged. So I just kept that part of myself hidden for so long. But meanwhile, in the background, I was always chasing it. And so there was this like rift created by that experience. Cause even after that, right, I fell back into addiction for years. It took me so long to get out of it, even though that was what I would call like a very spiritual experience or an awakening experience. It really didn't solve everything for me. Even it was, to me, it became this thing that I compared everything to, you know?
Hmm.
And so it really created so much disharmony for me in my life. And like I was just struggling trying to contextualize it and make sense of it. And I had these two contrasting realities that were just so polarized. And so I, for many years I remained an addict, and then I ended up getting sober after at the end of a really, hard run. And I went through a 12-step program and stone cold sober for 10 years. And then I started pursuing after that, like I went down another kind of rabbit hole. I started pursuing psychedelics, and that was the closest I've ever come to actually recreating that experience. But even psychedelics became their own trap, right? This, and what I've learned is that this seeking and this like, this seeking thing we do, it can create such a disharmony inside of our bodies. And what I'm really learning, and this is the main thing that my work is around spirituality, is that this is it. This is what we get to be here, right? Like we get to do this. And if we're using these spiritual ideas to kind of escape this place, we're actually not being spiritual, because this place is just as spiritual. Even though from this context I've had, it is very dreamlike. But there's this reality here that we have to contend with. And it can be a very beautiful experience through the challenge that it brings. And so, for me, a few years ago, after some of these, numinous psychedelic experiences, and then having to integrate the lessons from that form of escapism, I met a good friend of mine, and then my wife, my wife, and and we started a men's group, and the men's group was based on this idea of integrating and becoming just effective beings while we're having this third world 3D experience, right? This 3D experience of being in the body. And so our work really has been to honor the beautiful esoteric ideas, but also to ground them in a reality that actually is effective and actually doesn't result in this form of escapism or separation from a realm that is just as, it's like the idea of non-duality, this idea of like, that nothing's separate, right? That includes everything here. That includes everything that's dual. That includes everything that's separate too. And so there's, and that's, I'm getting a little esoteric here, but that's the basis of my work, right? And so we've created a men's group where we can lean into becoming as authentic as we can, right? Exculpating and unearthing these energies that we resist inside of ourselves, the things that we put over the top of those energies, like this intention, like this desire to become more spiritual, is sometimes is just this form of denying the human realm, the humanity within us. And I've just seen it so much. I've seen it, I did a recent, critique on one of the Aubrey Marcus podcasts. He had talked about this idea of like, this sacred three-way thing he was doing. And
I saw
there's
that your
kind of,
video on polyamory or whatever.
yeah, yeah. And well, and that, and I really, I respect Aubrey. He's done amazing things. I just relate with him because I understand what it's like to, chase this pleasure, right? This loftiness. And what I found is that where the treasure lies is in the shadow, in the places we don't want to look. And so, it's that place that I have to learn to integrate, which was like at the time I had that numinous spiritual experience was when I just finally faced the discomfort with my reality, right? Like I started to walk this path of like facing the shadow, because true wholeness includes the whole spectrum. You can't get to the light by denying the shadow. You can only
It's
bring,
almost like
yeah,
messy but necessary or something.
that's
Like
it, man.
that's how I resonate with what you're saying. By the way, very poignant and succinct. Like you've got away with words. That was good.